Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
And we thank our Rabbi for his beautiful message. What always amazes me now that I'm writing messages at least once a month is how he never read from notes. It was just, he would study all week long and it would just come. And there were times when he said that the whole message changed as he was speaking because God was leading him in a different direction. A couple of things that I noticed that I was making notes again while he was speaking. And I love when it says, when we were conceived, he breathed his ruach, his spirit, into each and every human being, every single human being on earth, Jew, Gentile, didn't matter. They have his principles, because it says we were made in his likeness and in his image. And it's not his physical image because he's not physical. So it's his spiritual, the characteristics that make up who he is. He breathed into us and he gave us his commandments, his principles. And it was a reminder when we heard them at Mount Sinai, it was a reminder what was already in our hearts. When we're doing something wrong, we know it because it's inherent within us. That's why as believers, we struggle so much because we don't want to always do what is right, or sometimes we do what is wrong and we know it and we're caught in it again. It's unbelievable how he keeps reminding us. And I have to keep reminding myself of this when I fail, when I do things or say things that I know are not pleasing to him, which I will do until, as Rabbi said, I'm on the other side. Then I remind myself, he is a God of beginning again, and that I never, I'm not completely abandoned. He hasn't let me go. He's just training me and testing me in this desert of a life. When we look at the journey of our people throughout their 40 years in the desert, they passed by these beautiful oases where there was water and there was palm trees or where they were able to look and see his cloud by day and his fire by night, where they knew that he was with them. And when we have those moments when we know that he's with us, we really rejoice. But it usually comes after a time of testing, a time of trial. And it's not easy when we're going through it. We just want to break down and cry and give up and walk away and I can't do it anymore. But then we remember who he is and how wonderful he is. And the other thing he said about the role of the Messiah. This is really important for us who we're called. We have been called in the past Messianic Jews, even though now we're not relating with the Messianic movement because we see Messiah very differently than the Messianic movement who borrowed it or inherited from Christianity, how they see the Messiah. But in the Torah, Mashiach means anointed. And there are many anointed ones. The kings, the priests would be anointed, water poured over them, and they were given a role before the whole community. Everyone acknowledged this role. So the Mashiach, what he's saying here is the true face of Mashiach is represented by Moses, who gave us the Torah. The next great Mashiach, who we acknowledge as a Mashiach of his day, is our Yeshua. We do not in this community see him. I mean, I can't say that about everybody, but this is what our rabbi taught, and this is what I now believe, that he certainly is not God. There is only one. There are no other gods. And that this Mashiach was a rabbi who was a bit of a rebel, like our Rabbi Netanel, our Rabbi Percy, who didn't fall into the, he couldn't be placed in a box. He, just because all the sages said something, didn't mean that he accepted it. And he used to say that all the time. Your sages, your rabbis say this, but this is what I say to you, which is what drew many of us to him, because he spoke in his own authority. And his job, he says, I did not come to abolish the Torah. And I tell you that those who teach others to keep it and to keep it themselves will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. And those who do not keep it and do not teach others to keep the Torah will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Now, I remember when I first read those lines, and I was, I think, 1 year when I became a believer in Yeshua, the Messiah, I was told that the Torah is no longer valid, that, and he didn't say that himself. So this is a made up rule that Christianity has taken on. And the only way they could make Yeshua into the Jesus Christ of Christianity was to destroy the Torah, because there's nowhere in Torah where it says that a man can take on the sins of other people by dying and shedding blood. This is all man-made religion. So the other thing that I liked about what Rabbi said is that we are a stiff-necked people. I see that in so many. I can say that I may be a fanatic, but I'm not stuck. I'm always willing to see a new perspective. But I could see how, one of the Proverbs says, a dog returns to its vomit, and how we think we're doing so well and we're not going to do the same thing anymore. And then, boom, we do it right all over again, like a dog returns to its vomit. And we are a stiff-necked people. And as soon as I start to feel really good about myself, oh, that was a good message. Oh, I said this to this person. Oh, look what I've done. It's like God comes behind me, behind my knees, and he brings me right back down to earth. And thank God I have friends who are able to tell me the truth sometimes of my own behavior. And he chose us, not because we're the greatest, not because we were the most numerous, certainly not because we were righteous, but because he wanted to do that, simply because he chose to do it. But he gave us one condition: whether we're Jew or non-Jew, who follow our Messiah, who follow the Torah, he said, you need to keep his word. It's not enough to just take copious notes when you hear a message, because we can believe, but if we don't do, it doesn't mean a thing. And if we do with the wrong intention, we do it to show off, look how good I am, tell everybody what a wonderful thing we did. God knows our hearts. He knows our hearts. We can't fool him. What else did he say? Oh, that we will do battle. Every single day is a battle. There's some days we feel really good, and there's some days we feel really bad. Right. And that's part of our walk with God. And but we always have to remember what our rabbi would tell us. God is a God of beginning again. He always gives us another opportunity to do things right, to make it right. And he hasn't given up on us, just like he's not giving up on Israel. And that he does miracles through us. And we don't always know what those little miracles are. We don't know how we're touching somebody. A little thing happened to me last week. I was taking a walk. I went to visit Dorothy, who's in the hospital. And on the way back, there were two men. I could see they were immigrants. They were sitting on a bench and they were having a cup of coffee. And one man had the bag on his lap that his coffee obviously was in, and it fell onto the floor, onto the sidewalk, and he didn't do anything. He just left it there. And I just walked over to him and I picked up the bag and I said to him, I wasn't unkind, but I said, the sidewalk is not a garbage can. And he right away, he thought I was going to accuse him of something, or that I was accusing him. And I wanted to show him that I wasn't being judgmental. I was just showing him. And then I said, there's a garbage can just down the street. Give me the bag and I'll put it in there for you. And I didn't even know where this came from. But he was so shocked, both of them, because they thought they were being reprimanded. But I just was showing them the right way without judging. And I just went and I put it down and I could see their face. Now, if I could only do that with my children, I would be really good. Sometimes we can't do that with our own families, but with complete strangers, it's easy to do. And the other thing I loved, excuse me, I just want to, because I took the notes, I love the idea. People read the Hebrew scriptures as if they're reading the Greek scriptures. The idea of Hebrew is very different than any other culture.
Gotcha. Yes.
It's a language of pictures. So when he says, circumcise your hearts.
Yes.
Obviously, we can't, as he said, we can't circumcise our hearts. What does that mean? We open up our chest and we make a little slit in our heart? Obviously not. But I like the picture of what he said about the cataracts. Brian had cataract surgery. I had cataract surgery. And I remember after my cataract surgery, how different I could see. All of a sudden, I could see all the dust in my house that I hadn't seen before. Everything was clear. And that's what that is what God is saying.
Yes.
Open your eyes.
Yes.
But what is he really saying? When he says circumcise your heart, in Hebrew, heart.
I can't see the speck in my eye.
Exactly. Don't take out the speck in your own, take the speck out of your own eye before you try to take the log. That's what Yeshua said. Take the log out of your own eye before you try to take the speck out of someone else's eye. Now, that is a very difficult thing to do because it's so much easier to see what other people do wrong than what we do wrong. We get upset at others, but then at the same time, we have to stop and say, maybe I'm doing that. So the heart is not feeling. The feelings in Hebrew are in the gut. The kishke are the tripas. That's where our feelings are. When you have a terrible feeling, you feel it in your gut. But when you think of something wrong, you feel it in your heart. When you think, it's our thoughts that God's talking about. So we constantly have to be aware of our way of thinking. That's what Rabbi Shaul said. Rabbi Saul, he said, take all your thoughts captive. Think of what you just said. Think of that thought. Is it real or is it not? Is it true or is it not? Why am I believing that? How often have I believed something about myself that absolutely was not true? And this is a daily, daily, daily exercise to deal with things. And, it's not an easy thing to tell the people around us what we see about them, because very often they take it wrong and we can hurt their feelings. But until they're willing to see how they're thinking, that's a very different thing. And not everybody is willing to go to that place. Let me see, what else did he say? Oh, yes. The last week of July, we celebrated what's called in Hebrew Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av. We're in the month of Av right now. Every month in Hebrew has a very different name than in the Roman calendar. So now we're in the Hebrew month Av. And the 9th day, if you look it up in Google, you'll see how many bad things, how many horrible things happened to Israel on this day, including the 2 destructions of the temple, both temples, on the 9th of Av. And right now we are seeing exactly the same scenario taking place in Israel. Sinat Chinam, nation divided, one people against the other. And the only way that Israel will come together is when there's a common enemy. And then we get together. And now the armies are gathering around Israel. We can see, and God is going to, it's almost impossible for us to change our own hearts. So God is working not only in each of us, but also in his land, because the land of Israel belongs to him. And he will do the work that he needs to bring our people back to him. And we need to pray. We need to pray for Israel, to keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, to keep praying for peace in our own hearts. Because that is not an easy thing to have. And this week I had struggled so much with so many things in my heart. And because I had prayed, we're coming up to the high holidays, not far. I think it's in a month or a little over a month. And we're in the days of Nachamu, comfort my people, where we're asking God, Rabbi Percy ended his message with Psalm 139, that he would repeat over and over. And when we say that to God, search me, O God, know my heart, test me, try me, and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way within me. Lead me into your way everlasting. And this is that, and he will do it. Guaranteed, if you ask him, he will do that. And then don't be surprised that the testing comes, because he's constantly cleansing us and purifying us and getting us ready for the moment that we're going to be with him. And it's going to be an awesome time. But in the meantime, we need to be here on this earth and accept our roles, no matter what they are. And our role is not what anybody else's role is. We each have our own place in this great orchestra. And he is the orchestra leader. And he's walking with us right through every trial, every tribulation that we go through on this earth. He is with us. So we continue to pray for each other. And I sometimes wonder where Rabbi Percy is right now, what he's doing, and if he can hear us and if he could see us. But I know that I think he would be very proud of us that we are continuing his work. So does anybody else have something that they gleaned from this message from today?
One thing that's really interesting, I love, is that God has put a sense of right or wrong and wrong in every human being. The 10 Commandments weren't really, it's not the first time, it was almost like a consolidation. When you get a text about something, or a statement, a declaration of things you already know, but they're written out nicely and you have them. In the sense, the 10 Commandments were that. God has put morality in our hearts, in our very being. And I love it in Ecclesiastes, I think it is, where it says God has put eternity in our hearts. And what does that mean? Eternity is God himself. And what God himself is he's a spiritual being with a moral being. It's all these things that he is. So he has put morality in everyone's hearts, every race. Even, you remember the last Coke bottle in the desert or whatever, like these desolate tribes, they have a sense of right and wrong. You see that over and over again in ancient tribes. It's us who are disobedient. It's not that, I mean, we don't have to teach them the 10 commandments. We have to show that it's already in them, but we do have to show them. But I love that, that God is really, he's with every human being and has put it in our hearts. And what I always say, like when you say, sometimes we might say, oh, look what I did, or I'm doing this, or I'm let's say I'm helping somebody because I want to be a good person. It's more, we're always going to struggle with that. I think is if we know that when we're, let's say, boasting, or I'm going to do a good thing for this person, but I don't really want to, but God wants us to do it. All these things and wrestlings, we can't fight it too much. We are by nature, we're selfish in ways, we're a mixture of things, but a good part of that is just, we're like children, we're selfish too. And we can't just say, well, I must have the exact right motive before I do this. We can't. And sometimes we're going to do it and we know that we should, and we're just going to do it and say, God, my heart is murky and I want this, I want that. I want that person to say, oh, well, look what she did. But we know it's when we really don't, it's a person who doesn't even look at that and really believes that they're good because they did that. That is something, but we know, like, okay, God, forgive me. I'm doing this and my motives aren't always 100%.
Right.
I think that's what we have to really, just realize that about ourselves.
Exactly. So it's been a wonderful time listening to our rabbi again. And I want to, if anybody else has anything to say, it's now or never.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
On your peace. Well, I know it's difficult because we have different languages here. Yeah, no es fácil. En otra lengua. I see.
Yeah.
I see Sari looking out at she's sitting on a beautiful balcony. I can see the columns. I don't know her scenery is lovely. Anyway, I want to wish you a wonderful Shabbat. Next week, we're going to hear the portion Re from Mauricio, which is also a wonderful message. And we'll continue. Please continue to pray for each other. I think Angel is coming back this coming Sunday. He'll be back. And so let's keep each other in prayer. Thank you for this day, for this wonderful time together. Shalom, Sari. Shalom. And God willing, we'll see you again next Shabbat.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.